We're back here on the San Francisco 49ers Report coming at you from Super Bowl Radio Row in Las Vegas. And coming up on today's 49ers Report, some Chiefs injury news going into Sunday, as well as some player interviews that we've gathered over the last 2 days here in Vegas. But first, Super Bowl 58, with every single day is getting closer and closer. Cannot wait for Sunday. And if you're with me, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. Programming reminder, we'll be back in the Chat Sports Studios for Sunday's game, Super Bowl 58, San Francisco and Kansas City, for another watch party. Make sure you subscribe and join us. So we've been talking about Chiefs left guard Joe Thuney a lot over the last couple of weeks, and it looks as though it's going to be a long shot for him to play. Who do we get that information from? None other than the Chiefs head coach Andy Reid, who called it a long shot for the All-Pro Joe Thuney to play on Sunday because of this pec injury. A lot of reports surfacing last week that it is indeed a torn pec for one of the best left guards in football. Still has not been ruled out for Sunday, though, because the Chiefs, Andy Reid, Joe Thuney, doing everything they can to try to rehabilitate that injury and just holding up a glimmer of hope that he's going to be able to play in this game. Hasn't been able to practice, though, and that's why, on top of this injury being somewhat worrisome and pretty severe, why it is a long shot for him to play along that Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And if the Chiefs are without Joe Thuney, they're without, as I mentioned, one of the best left guards in football, who was an All-Pro, Pro Bowler this year, overall Pro Football Focus grade of 74.6. Very good as a pass blocker in front of Patrick Mahomes, 83.4 on the PFF grade there. Run blocking grade doesn't excel as much there in that area of the Chiefs' offensive game, 66.1, but very heady player, very smart player who flourished and thrived with the New England Patriots and doesn't commit a lot of penalties or mistakes. 2 penalties, 2 sacks allowed this year, only 6 hits on Patrick Mahomes, only surrendered 33 pressures. And for Mahomes, there is a formula to beat him. A lot of teams haven't been able to execute on that formula because it's been really, really difficult. If you think back to Super Bowl 55, this was the Super Bowl after the Chiefs took down the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 54, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were incredible defensively with their effort that night. And Patrick Mahomes was pressured on 29 of 56 dropbacks. That was the most pressures generated by a defense on any quarterback in Super Bowl history. The Chiefs were banged up along the offensive line in that football game, and they've also made it a priority, led by general manager Brett Veach, to shore up and fortify the offensive line because they didn't want to have their quarterback under duress like Mahomes was that night because he was running for his life, barely had any time to really survey the field, go through his progressions, and he was under siege. He was also sacked 3 times, and the Buccaneers able to generate on top of those pressures 10 quarterback hits on Patrick Mahomes. So for San Francisco's defensive line, which hasn't been able consistently to get after the quarterback this year, even though there's been a lot of capital invested along that Niners defensive line, they're going to have to generate that pressure on Patrick Mahomes in order to dethrone Kansas City as the reigning Super Bowl champions and get on that quest for 6 and bring back that 6th Lombardi trophy to the Bay Area. And as part of this conversation, I think a player in the spotlight for San Francisco in this game is going to be defensive tackle Javon Hargrave, who the Niners this past offseason signed to a 4-year, $84 million contract. And some Niner fans have been disappointed with his production this year because the sack numbers certainly were down after he had 11 last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. But when you're paid $84 million, you come to the Bay Area, and those expectations are going to skyrocket. And if he dominates and pushes the interior of the pocket, and he's able to muddy up the pocket so that Mahomes doesn't have a firm base beneath him, and Mahomes is going to have to jet out of the pocket to his right and his left, and he can't drop back and survey the field all night long, then the Niners secondary can hold up, as we've seen, because this secondary is very, very good. Now, I talked to Javon Hargrave today during the Niners media availability. I first of all asked him where his nickname the Gravedigger comes from. Then I asked him about going to the Super Bowl in back-to-back years, and it's consecutive years in which he's going to be trying to sack and track down Patrick Mahomes.
What's the origin of Gravedigger, your nickname?
I think it was just off of when they take my last name Grave, and it was my DC from college. He just kind of did the Gravedigger, and I put it on Instagram, and that's what everybody ever called me.
Your experience last year going up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Philadelphia had 70 sacks last year, 15 more than any team. You were a part of that with 11. No sacks in the Super Bowl, though. How does that experience kind of benefit you going into this game with this defense against Mahomes again?
We just know it's gonna take everybody. Patrick Mahomes and the offensive line gonna make it hard, but we just gotta play as a unit and rush together. And hopefully we can get them down.
Not a lot of players can say they've been to Super Bowls in back-to-back years. Have you taken a moment to kind of sit back and reflect on what this journey's been like for you?
Yeah, I've definitely had 2 long seasons, so I definitely thank God every day for giving me this opportunity. But man, I just want to win it now.
And I'm telling you right now, Hargrave has a big night. I love the Niners' chances of winning this football game because, again, if you can get after Patrick Mahomes and he doesn't have that routine-like aspect to his game, and if he can't play on structure, yes, he's very good at the improvisational nature of his game and extending plays, but this receiver talent for Kansas City is down. And if the Niners can replicate what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to do in Super Bowl 55, it goes a long way in really disrupting that Chiefs offensive momentum. So with that, let me ask you this, your confidence level in the Niners to beat Kansas City. And I want you to scale that level of confidence from 1 to 100. 1, not confident at all. 100, very, very confident. Let me know down below in the comment section right now. We're only ramping up on today's San Francisco 49ers report. Coming up next, more injury news for Kansas City that could play a big role in determining this game, as well as some player interviews from Las Vegas. But first, the 49ers report is sponsored by Game Time. If you're looking for last-minute tickets to the big game right here in the Sin City, use no other app than Game Time because you're guaranteed to get the best seats at the lowest price guaranteed. And with Game Time, if you're not sure if you're going to go to Las Vegas for the big game, or you're having a very busy schedule depending on what your work life is, your personal life is, you can wait it out until the last moment. And with Game Time, prices drop as the event gets closer. And if you do want to go to the big game here in Las Vegas, special promo, thanks to our friends at Game Time, $100 off if you use the code VEGAS100. Now, if you don't want to go to the big game, you don't want to go to a football game in general, you can go to other sporting events. You can go to comedy shows. I'm a big music fan as well. You can go to a theater event as well. I know Blue Man Group is huge here in Las Vegas. I've seen the promos everywhere. So if you're coming to Las Vegas, not going to the game, but you want some entertainment in your life, I've gone to a Blue Man Group show before. They're so entertaining, and I did use the Game Time app. Niners games, concerts, Warriors games, and more. Warriors could be making some big moves going into the NBA trade deadline, and if they do, that team could be a little bit easier to watch because it's been a little bit rocky for Golden State so far. Also, on top of that, code VEGAS100 to get $100 off for the big game. You can get $20 off using the code NinersChat. All of that information available for you down in the comment section as well as in the description of this video. So, Joe Thuney, really the big injury for Kansas City that we've been honing in on because Chiefs offensive line very good. Niners defensive line going to have to come to play. Another sneaky injury here is the one to Jerick McKinnon. The Chiefs opened up his practice window this week. He is questionable to play with the groin injury, which has really lingered over the last few weeks. But he was still a very productive player and has been a productive player for Kansas City since leaving San Francisco and really resurrecting his career under Andy Reid alongside Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. He finished 3rd in receiving touchdowns for the Chiefs despite only playing 12 games this year. And what he brings to that Kansas City offensive arsenal is a dual threat back and a gadget weapon who can really pose as a receiving threat. And Patrick Mahomes is obviously an alien at the quarterback position. We talk about it all the time. He can make plays in structure, out of structure. He can make plays with his legs when the pocket breaks down, even if you have great pass coverage downfield. But he's also so good at finding backs who can leak out of the backfield, whether they set up in pass protection or it's a little bit of a delayed skirt out of the backfield. Mahomes always has kind of that innate ability, innate feel to understand, okay, things might not be open downfield. I know that I'm going to have Jerick McKinnon leaking out. Let me dump that screen off to him, get some blockers out in front, receivers blocking downfield, and he can really pick up some chunks. So questionable right now as far as whether or not McKinnon does play. The former Niner obviously disappointed some Niner fans because he couldn't stay healthy, but very legitimate playmaker for that Chiefs offensive attack. As for Charles Omenihu, Niner fans really grew to like him in his season and a half in the scarlet, red, and gold, but he did tear his ACL in the AFC Championship game. Trade deadline acquisition back in 2021. I thought this was an under-the-radar move made by John Lynch going into the trade deadline back a couple of years ago. Niners needed some defensive line help, and Omenihu ended up really exceeding all expectations. Had a solid career collegiately at Texas, and then got off to a slow start with Houston, but then the Niners, led by defensive line coach Chris Kocurek, really developed him into a really good player who could play defensive end, he could play defensive tackle, and because of the athleticism, because of the size, because of the length to disengage from some offensive linemen, he became a mismatch and a nightmare for some opposing offensive linemen because he had the speed and quickness to play defensive end or defensive tackle. And going up against some of those slower interior offensive linemen, oftentimes he was able to win a lot of those matchups because of that quickness of him playing defensive end. And that's why he signed that nice deal with Kansas City this past offseason, 2-year, $16 million contract, had a strip sack of Lamar Jackson in the AFC title game, which set up a Chiefs score and really helped turn the momentum of that football game. Good bend coming around the edge, and Kansas City, like San Francisco, such a good scouting department. They understood that Omenihu could be a really good player. That's why they gave him a little bit of a bag in free agency. You look at what he did this year. Pass rush grade, according to Pro Football Focus, of 70.4, had 17 hurries. Missed the early portion of the season due to that suspension, but still had 29 pressures, 5 hits, and 7 sacks as well. And I had an opportunity to catch up with Charles Omenihu. He wasn't on one of the stands during media night. He was kind of off to the side, but wanted to talk to him about his stint with the Niners, what he thinks about that organization. He spoke glowingly of Kyle Shanahan, Jed York and Kyle Shanahan, but also how defensive line coach Chris Kocurek is able to elevate players. And here's what Charles Omenihu had to say on Monday night.
You left the Niners, and when you got traded there in 2021, you played a pivotal role, defensive tackle, defensive end hybrid, and they were really able to bring the best out of you. I know you have a lot of respect for that organization. Now you go to Kansas City, you're playing San Francisco. What are your emotions like going into this game against your former team with your current team, and what do you have to say about the Niners?
I wish I was playing. That's how I feel, because I wanted to show them exactly what they helped create and what they lost. But how I feel about them is a great organization. I mean, Kyle, stand-up coach, Jed, great owner, GM, John. So they're good guys. I appreciate them, everything. They helped me put myself on the map as far as my play there, and I can thank them on that end.
Chris Kocurek specifically, I think he's the best defensive line coach in the NFL. What makes him such a great coach, and how is he able to maximize players along the defensive line?
He just knows what you're going to be good at, and then he harps on it. The system and the scheme helps, but Chris knows exactly what guys needs to do. He's not going to let you really divert, and he's going to be on you. If he sees something new, he's going to be on you and never waver.
Good to chop it up there with Charles Omenihu. You could really tell that he enjoyed his time with the San Francisco 49ers, playing a pivotal role in the playoffs the last 2 years, and obviously balled out with Kansas City before that unfortunate injury. Really wanted to see him play in Super Bowl 58. Not going to be able to. As for Skyy Moore, will we see him play in Super Bowl 58? Last year in Super Bowl 57, he had a big touchdown against the Philadelphia Eagles. Chiefs like to utilize him in a lot of pre-motion sets, also as kind of a gadget weapon who they drafted 2 years ago. He has not played since Week 15 because of a knee injury. Also questionable to play on Sunday. The Chiefs opening up his practice window. For his standards, a little bit of a disappointing season for him. A lot of it because of those injuries, 21 catches, 244 yards, and a touchdown. But as we've seen all year in 2023, the Chiefs offense really struggled to find momentum and find a rhythm. In the playoffs, though, that has not been the case. And that's what happens when you have one of the best, if not the best offensive mind at the head coaching position in the history of the NFL with Patrick Mahomes, a stud like Travis Kelce. You just find a way to find answers, and the Chiefs have done that in the playoffs where they have that rhythmic nature back to their offense. They've been able to move the football, score the football, and they look like the unit that we've been accustomed to seeing under Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. We'll see if Skyy Moore can be a part of that in Sunday's game. Do want to point this out before we hop on out of here. Warren Sharp does such a great job of covering the NFL from an analytical sense. Saw him on Super Bowl Radio Row last year. I know he's here this year. If I have an opportunity to get him on the show, would certainly love to do that. But he tweeted this out today, and this is going to go a long way as far as understanding what the Niners might try to do defensively with their game plan, but then conversely, what the Chiefs might do with their offensive game plan. Because, as I alluded to a little while ago, it's not just my opinion that the Niners have a really good secondary. That's fact. The numbers certainly back that up. Warren Sharp mentioning that. The 49ers have an elite secondary, he said, but play-action pass attempts have caused issues for them since Week 14. Against no play-action, EPA is at number 5, 36% success rate number 6, yards per attempt number 3. But with play action, and that is something that the Chiefs utilize with their offense, EPA per attempt drops down to 28th, success rate drops down to 24th, and then yards per attempt at 10.4, that's 28th in the NFL. So when you pair that up with the Niners needing to generate a pass rush and stopping the run, if the Niners can't generate a pass rush, if they can't stop the run, that opens up the play action for Kansas City. Could be a long night for this Niners defense, which if they can't get off the field because of what I just broke down, getting that 6th Lombardi trophy is going to be really, really difficult. We've been providing great coverage right here on the 49ers Report over the last 2 days. I've been doing the same thing with some short-form content, long-form content on my social media pages. I keep you in the know right here on YouTube, but also on X at Chase_Senior and on Instagram at Chase_Senior. You see the follower counts to my right. Hit me up over there. Don't be a stranger. Say what's up. And if you're in Vegas, let's link up. Let's get a drink.